My name is Sienna Park, and I learned the hard way that you can share blood with people who still treat you like a stranger. 6 months after my grandmother passed, I flew from Seattle to Charleston for my half-sister Camille's wedding. An event so exclusive it had its own hashtag, its own security team, and a guest list printed like a hardcover book. I arrived early holding a small cedar box tied with a cream ribbon. Nothing flashy, no glitter, no designer logo. Just something that fit in my palm and weighed less than a phone. At the entrance to Magnolia Haven, a waterfront estate draped in white florals, a coordinator in black scanned my face, then my invitation. "I'm family," I said, calm enough that my voice didn't shake. "Sienna Park, Camille's sister." Her smile faltered. She flipped through the book once, twice, and then she looked up with a softness that felt like pity. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name isn't here." For a second, all I could hear was the distant music, the laughter from inside, the clink of champagne glasses, like the world was celebrating in a room where I didn't exist. "Could you check again?" I asked. She did. Slowly, thoroughly. Then she exhaled. "No, ma'am." I didn't argue with her. This wasn't her cruelty. It was my family's. I stepped aside, pulled out my phone, and called Camille. She picked up on the third ring, breathless, as if I was interrupting something precious. "What?" "It's Sienna," I said. "I'm at the entrance. They said I'm not on the list." A pause, long enough for me to hear the party behind her. Then she laughed. Not the kind you share with someone, the kind you use on someone. "You actually came?" she said. "Ah, wow. I just want to give you a gift," I replied, "and wish you well." Another laugh, sharper this time. "A gift? Sienna, you don't belong here. This day is for people who matter. Don't make it weird." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "So you really didn't invite me?" "No," she said, like it was obvious. "And don't call Mom. She agrees. Just leave, okay?" I stared at the cedar box in my hand, thumb tracing the ribbon. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll leave it on the gift table." "Whatever," Camille snapped. "Just don't cause a scene." She hung up. I walked back toward the entrance, not to beg, never to beg again, but to ask the coordinator one last thing. "Could you point me to the gift table?" She hesitated, then she did. Because some gifts don't sparkle, some gifts detonate. And when Camille opened mine in front of everyone, she didn't just lose her smile. She lost the story she'd been telling the world about who I was. To understand why I showed up at Camille's wedding with a cedar box instead of an apology, you have to see the life I grew up inside. Beautiful on the outside, cold in the corners. There were 2 daughters in our Charleston home, but only one ever felt like the main character. Camille was 3 years older and always destined for big things. She got piano lessons, pageant dresses, and the kind of attention that made adults lean in. I got the leftovers, hand-me-downs, polite nods, and the quiet job of not needing anything. No one ever announced I didn't belong. They just acted like my presence was optional. I understood it for real on my 10th birthday. I woke up before sunrise. Sure, there would be balloons, maybe a cake with my name, just once, written in icing. I ran downstairs in my pajamas and stopped in the doorway of the kitchen. My mom, Elaine, was on the phone, laughing like she had all the time in the world. "Yes, Mrs. Whitaker, Camille will do the debutante brunch," she said. "Of course we'll sponsor a table." I waited until she paused. "Mom," I said softly, "it's my birthday." She covered the receiver like I'd interrupted business. "I know, honey. We'll do something later," she whispered, eyes already sliding away from me. "Go play." My dad had already left for work. The day kept moving. The house kept shining, and later never came. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the dark, telling myself I shouldn't be disappointed, because disappointment meant I'd expected love. Then, just after 9, there was a knock. My grandmother Lillian stepped in without asking, carrying a small wrapped bundle. She smelled like cedar and cinnamon, like warmth without strings attached. She sat beside me and brushed my hair back, gentle, as if she could smooth the hurt right out of my skin. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she said. "I'm sorry they forgot." I tried to shrug it off, but my throat closed anyway. She placed the gift in my lap. Inside was an old camera, real metal, heavy, with a leather strap, softened by years. "This belonged to my father," she told me. "He used it to capture truth when people wanted a prettier story." Before she left, she set a tiny, unfinished cedar box on my nightstand. "Keep your important things in here," she said. "One day you'll know what matters." I kept that box through every move, every job, every win. And so years later, when Camille decided I didn't belong at her wedding, I didn't bring a speech. I brought the box. Here's part 3 of 20. The stage was full, but their seats were empty. 8 years after that forgotten birthday, I stood in front of my mirror in a navy cap and gown, pinning my hair back the way Grandma Lillian liked. Neat, practical, ready. I'd graduated top of my class. I'd earned a full scholarship to a respected arts program in the Northwest. My guidance counselor called it rare. My principal called it historic. I called it proof that I was real. Downstairs, the house smelled like coffee and expensive cologne. My father's laptop was open on the kitchen island. My mother was already dressed, pearls at her throat. Camille sat at the table scrolling, glossy and bored, as if my day were background noise. "Nama, the ceremony starts at 2, I said, holding my folded speech. I'd been chosen to give a short address, 3 minutes about grit, about hope. "We should leave by 1. My mother didn't look up. "Sweetheart, something came up." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" My father finally met my eyes, but his voice stayed flat. "Camille has a luncheon with the Whitakers. Their son's at a venture firm. This could open doors." "It's my graduation," I said, softer than I meant to. "I'm speaking." Camille's mouth curved into a tiny smile. Not proud, amused. My father sighed like I was being difficult. "Art is unpredictable, Sienna. Camille's opportunity is concrete." The room went quiet, and in that quiet, I realized I'd been practicing a speech for an audience that didn't exist. I drove myself to the auditorium with my notes on the passenger seat and my hands shaking on the wheel. Rows of families filled the bleachers, cameras flashing, moms crying, dads standing to clap. When they called my name, I looked out anyway. One familiar face lifted from the crowd. Grandma Lillian sat in the front row, clapping like thunder. She stood when I walked across the stage, smiling so wide it hurt to look at. Afterward, she hugged me tight and whispered, "They're blind, not you." Outside in the summer heat, she pressed an envelope into my palm. Thick paper, my name written in her careful script. "Don't open this until you're ready to leave," she said. "It's not money, it's a map." "A map to what?" I asked. "To your life," she replied, eyes shining. "And to the truth they've been hiding in plain sight." That night, I sat on my bed with the envelope beside the cedar box. I didn't open it, not yet. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. If I stayed, I'd keep shrinking, and I was done shrinking. 8 days after graduation, I stood in my bedroom with 2 suitcases open and my cedar box on the bed like a quiet witness. My mother was downstairs hosting a brunch for Camille's future connections. Silver trays, pressed linens, laughter that never reached my door. No one asked where I was going. No one knocked. That was the moment Grandma Lillian's words came back. "Don't open the envelope until you're ready to leave." I broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside was her handwriting, a simple list titled, "A Map for Sienna," a plane ticket credit she'd bought in my name. The address of a woman in Seattle, Marjorie Klein. "The only editor who will tell you the truth." A small key taped to the paper with one sentence beneath it. "Safe deposit box, Harbor Federal, Charleston. Use only if you must." A folded letter of introduction to a photographer she trusted. And one final line, underlined twice. "When they finally notice you, ask yourself why." I sat on the floor and cried. Not because I was scared to go, but because someone had loved me enough to plan for my escape. That night, Grandma called. Her voice sounded thin like wind through the old curtains. "You're leaving," she said, not as a question. "Yes," I whispered. "Good," she replied. "Take the camera. Let it teach you to see clearly. And don't confuse being needed with being valued." I left before sunrise. No goodbye speech, no dramatic exit. Just a rideshare, an airport, and a one-way flight toward rain and possibility. Seattle was hard at first. I carried light stands for a wedding photographer, cleaned lenses, held umbrellas over strangers while they promised forever. I learned angles, timing, patience. I learned that moments don't repeat and neither do chances. I saved every dollar. I shot small gigs on weekends, then bigger ones. Then corporate events where people said, "Who did this?" And my name began to travel without me begging it to. 3 years later, I signed a lease on a tiny studio space and hung one framed photo on the wall. Grandma Lillian smiling, mid-laugh, caught in perfect light. My family never asked how I was doing. Camille called only to narrate her life like a trophy tour. Promotions, parties, men with famous last names. When she asked about me, it was always the same, said with a laugh. "Still playing with your little camera?" I always answered the same way. "I'm doing fine." And I meant it, until the morning my phone rang with a Charleston number I didn't recognize. The Charleston number left a voicemail that didn't say much, just my full name, spelled correctly, and a sentence that made my stomach drop. "Ms. Park, this is Daniel Mercer. I'm your grandmother's attorney. Please call me back as soon as you can." I called from my studio in Seattle, still wearing a hoodie, still smelling like camera batteries and coffee. When he answered, his voice was careful, practiced. "I'm sorry," he said. "Lillian passed last night." For a moment, the city outside my window blurred. The only person who ever saw me clearly was gone. 2 flights later, I was back in Charleston, sitting in a stone church that felt too big for grief. The pews were full, people who'd praised Grandma's generosity, her taste, her influence. My parents were in the front row accepting condolences like they were hosting another brunch. Camille stood beside them in black silk, perfect posture, perfect tears. But every time the pastor paused, Camille leaned toward my mother and whispered. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the shape of them. The house, the jewelry, the trust. I sat alone, third row, hands folded, the cedar box heavy in my purse like a secret heartbeat. After the service, strangers hugged me as if we were friends. My mother kissed my cheek like it was duty. My father patted my shoulder once and turned away. Camille didn't hug me at all. "Seattle looks rainy," she said, eyes scanning my dress like it might reveal my bank balance. "How's your little camera life?" I didn't answer. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of watching me flinch. That's when Daniel Mercer approached, a gray-haired man with kind eyes and a folder tucked under his arm. "Ms. Park," he said quietly, "your grandmother asked that you stay behind, alone." My mother's head snapped up. "Anything Lillian left goes through the family," she said, too fast. Mr. Mercer didn't argue, he simply held my gaze. "Not this." In a small office behind the sanctuary, he closed the door and placed the folder on the table between us. "Your grandmother amended her estate 2 years ago," he said. "She instructed me to keep this separate from the public will." He slid a notarized document toward me. I read it once, and then again, slower, because my eyes didn't want to believe it. The Lillian Park collection, the heirloom jewelry, the vintage pieces, the items my mother treated like trophies, was being transferred in full to me. Not divided, not shared. Mine. My hands started to shake as I opened the attached letter. Grandma's handwriting was steady. "You don't chase applause," she wrote. "You honor what's real. That's why I'm trusting you." Mr. Mercer cleared his throat. "She also asked you to decide when to reveal this. She believed timing matters. Outside, I could already hear my family laughing again, already counting. I tucked the documents into my bag, feeling the strange weight of truth. Quiet, lethal, undeniable. Because now I understood what Grandma meant. Some people don't notice you until you're holding something they want. And Camille was about to notice me. I stayed in Charleston 2 days after the funeral, long enough to watch my family turn grief into inventory. At the reception, Camille drifted from table to table in black lace. Every few minutes she mentioned Grandma's collection, with a rehearsed sigh. How Lillian's pearls would look stunning on her one day. How the pieces belonged in the right hands. My mother nodded along. I kept my face calm and my bag close. Inside it were Mr. Mercer's documents, folded so neatly they looked harmless. I didn't correct anyone. Not because I was afraid, because Grandma had been clear. Timing matters. Truth hits hardest when it walks in on its own. Before I flew back to Seattle, I used the key taped to Grandma's map and opened her safe deposit box. There was no cash. Just a faded photo of Grandma wearing the sapphire brooch and a note in her handwriting. Don't let them turn my legacy into a costume. On the plane, I stared at that sentence until it stopped feeling like ink and started feeling like a boundary. 3 months later, the next chapter arrived the way it always did, through Camille. She called at midnight. Guess what? She sang. I'm engaged. I congratulated her. I meant it, in the polite way you congratulate someone who spent her whole life collecting proof she's special. The wedding will be huge, she added. Magnolia Haven, waterfront, black tie. The Whitakers are inviting everyone who matters. Everyone who matters. After we hung up, I waited for my invitation. A week passed, then 2, then 4. My mailbox stayed empty. Finally, I called my mother. Did the invitation get sent to the wrong address? Silence, long enough to feel like a door closing. Sienna, she said carefully, Camille thinks it's best if you don't attend. Why? She wants the day to feel polished, my mother replied, like she was describing place settings. No awkward energy. No questions. I laughed once, quiet and sharp. So I'm a question now. My mother didn't answer. That night I opened Camille's social media and watched a countdown to a wedding I wasn't invited to. Dress fittings, champagne tastings, a venue tour, and a guest list that was clearly not intimate. Hundreds of comments, hundreds of seats. I stared until my eyes burned, then I walked to my closet and pulled down the cedar box. I didn't plan revenge, I planned closure. 2 days before the wedding, and I booked a flight to Charleston and slipped the box into my purse like a heartbeat. Because if my own sister wanted to erase me from her story, I was about to hand her the page she couldn't rewrite. 2 days before the wedding, I landed in Charleston with one carry-on, one quiet plan, and the cedar box pressed flat against my ribs like a secret I could finally breathe. The city looked the same. Live oaks, iron gates, old money pretending it invented grace. But I didn't. I checked into a small hotel 10 minutes from Magnolia Haven, then sat on the edge of the bed and opened my purse. Inside the box was an envelope, sealed and plain. It held copies of the documents Mr. Mercer gave me, Grandma Lillian's handwritten letter, and one photo I'd never shown anyone. Grandma and me at her work table, not polishing the sapphire brooch while she told me its story. No hashtags, no captions, just proof. I wasn't bringing this to win. I was bringing it to end the lying. That night, Camille's wedding content filled my phone like a flood. A countdown video, a drone shot of the estate, a clip of her laughing in a white robe with bridesmaids chanting her name. In the comments, strangers wrote things like, "She's living a dream." I watched until my thumb went numb, then I turned the screen face down. At 5:30 a.m. on wedding day, I woke before my alarm. My hands were steady, which surprised me. I showered, braided my hair, and put on a simple navy dress. Elegant enough to belong, plain enough to disappear. I added a single necklace Grandma gave me, not valuable, just meaningful. Then I wrote the card. Camille, wishing you peace, even if you don't know how to hold it yet. From Sienna. I stared at the ink for a long time, waiting for guilt to arrive. It didn't. What arrived instead was clarity. I could love someone and still refuse their version of me. Outside, the air was humid and sweet, like the world was trying to soften the edges. The rideshare dropped me at Magnolia Haven just as staff were placing last-minute flowers. Music drifted from inside, strings warming up, a rehearsal of joy. I stood at the gate and watched guests glide past security in silk and tailored suits, confident because they were expected. A coordinator approached, headset on, clipboard in hand. Good morning, name? My heart kicked once, not fear, anticipation. I lifted my chin. Sienna Park, I'm the bride's sister. Her pen paused. She smiled automatically and opened the guest book. A 1-page? 2. Her smile began to fade. She flipped again, slower now, like she was searching for something that should have been there. And that's when I knew. Camille hadn't just left me out. She'd erased me. The coordinator's finger hovered over the page, then slid down the column again, slower this time, as if my name might appear if she tried hard enough. I'm sorry, she said. Could there be another last name? No, I replied. Sienna Park. Behind her, the ballroom doors cracked open as someone passed through. Warm light, roses, laughter that didn't know my name. The coordinator lowered her clipboard. I can call the bride's assistant. It's fine, I said. I'll call her. Camille answered on the third ring, breathless. What? It's me, I said. I'm at Magnolia Haven. They said I'm not on the list. A pause, then a laugh, a sharp and brittle. Because you're not invited. I held the cedar box tighter. Camille, I'm your sister. And this is my wedding, she snapped. Do you know who's here? People who matter. I'm not letting you turn this into one of your sad stories. I'm not here to ruin anything, I said. I just wanted to give you a gift, quietly. What could you possibly give me? She said. Someone near her chuckled. Don't embarrass me today, Sienna. Just leave. My voice stayed calm. So, Mom agrees. Camille exhaled like I was exhausting. Mom wants peace. Dad wants no drama. Go back to Seattle and keep pretending you're successful. I swallowed, tasting metal. Okay, I said. I'll leave the gift on the table. Fine, she said. Drop it and go. Don't make anyone talk about you. She hung up. I stood there for one beat. Phone down, shoulders loose, my heart steady. The coordinator watched me like she expected tears. I didn't give her any. Where's the gift table? I asked. She pointed me toward a side entrance. Inside, Magnolia Haven looked unreal. Orchids, mirrored trays, champagne towers sparkling under chandeliers. The gift table was already crowded. Velvet boxes, silk-wrapped packages, envelopes tucked beneath gold ribbons. My cedar box looked small among all that money. I placed it near the edge where it would be seen, then slid my card under the ribbon. Camille, wishing you peace even if you don't know how to hold it yet. Sienna. As I turned, the coordinator followed a step. Ma'am, are you sure you don't want to stay? We could try. No, I said, gentle but final. Some gifts speak louder when the giver is gone. I walked out through the gates past the valet line, while past guests arriving in satin and confidence. At the curb, I didn't look back, because inside my sister was about to open a box she thought was harmless, and the room would never sound the same again. I wasn't inside Magnolia Haven when Camille finally noticed my gift. I learned what happened later, from a waiter who recognized my face at the gate, and from a short video someone posted before staff could pull it down. By the time dinner ended, Camille was glowing again. She moved through the ballroom like the crown fit perfectly, accepting compliments as if they were deposits. My mother laughed too loudly beside her. My father shook hands with men who smelled like money and old promises. During the toast, Camille lifted her champagne flute and said, Family is everything. The room applauded, and if anyone noticed the empty space where my seat should have been, nobody said a word. Then the MC announced a sweet tradition. The bride would open a few gifts before cake. The crowd leaned in. A mountain of boxes waited. Designer bags, velvet cases, envelopes thick with checks. Camille walked to the table and clapped her hands. "Let's see who understood the assignment," she joked, and people laughed. She opened 3 gifts quickly. Crystal, silver, something that looked like a honeymoon upgrade. Each time she performed gratitude like it was part of the dress. Then her eyes landed on the cedar box. Small, plain, almost easy to miss. She picked it up between 2 manicured fingers like it might stain her. "Oh," she said, loud enough for the nearest tables. "My sister sent something." A few guests shifted. Someone whispered, "She has a sister?" Camille smiled wider, the way she did when she wanted the room on her side. "She couldn't make it," she added, then shrugged. "You know, Seattle." My mother's lips tightened, but she didn't correct her. Camille slid the card out, read it, and scoffed. "Wishing me peace," she repeated, amused. "How dramatic." She untied the ribbon slowly, making a show of it. Phones lifted. When she opened the lid, her smile froze. There wasn't jewelry. There wasn't a joke gift. There was an official envelope. Heavy paper, stamped, the kind that doesn't belong at a party. Camille reached in and pulled out the first page. Her eyes moved left to right once, then stopped. Color drained from her face so fast it looked like someone turned off the lights behind her skin. "What is it?" her new husband murmured, leaning closer. Camille didn't answer. Her fingers began to tremble as she read the line at the top. Bold, unforgiving, transfer of ownership. The Lillian Park Collection. And in the sudden silence of 400 guests, my sister whispered one word that didn't sound like her at all. "No." Camille stood frozen with that document in her hands, lips parted like her body forgot how to be a bride. Ethan leaned in, voice low. "Camille, what is that?" She snapped the paper toward her chest. "Nothing, it's—" Her eyes flicked across the room. Phones were already lifting, curiosity turning into hunger. "It's a sick joke." My mother, Elaine, was at her side in seconds, heels clicking too fast for someone pretending this was fine. "Give it to me," she hissed, grabbing the pages. Elaine read one line, then another. The color drained from her face like someone pulled the plug. Camille saw it and panicked. "Mom," she whispered. Too sharp, too desperate. "Tell them it's fake." Elaine's mouth moved, but no words came out. At the nearest table, a woman in an emerald gown leaned forward. "Is that a notarized transfer?" she murmured, loud enough for others to hear. Whispers spread like fire under dry leaves. Ethan reached for the paper. "Let me see." Camille slapped his hand away. "Don't." That single word, tight, ugly, landed hard. Ethan's expression shifted, not anger yet, but confusion sharpened into suspicion. The MC hovered with the microphone, smile dying in real time. The band stopped playing. Even the chandeliers felt quieter. Camille forced a laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "Everyone, relax. My sister has always loved dramatic props." No one laughed back. Elaine's hands trembled as she lowered the pages. "Camille," she whispered, barely audible. "This is real." Camille's eyes widened with fury, then fear. She looked down into the cedar box again, as if the truth might vanish if she stared hard enough. That's when she saw the second item. A slim black USB drive taped to the bottom with a cream note in Grandma Lillian's handwriting. "Play this at 9 p.m. The clock above the bar read 9:03. Camille's breath hitched. "No," she said again, louder this time. "No, that's not—" Ethan picked up the USB gently like it might bite. What is this? Put it down, Camille snapped, reaching. He didn't. Across the room, the venue's AV tech looked uncertain, waiting for direction. People were staring now, fully staring, odd like the wedding had turned into a trial and the next exhibit was about to be shown. Ethan's voice stayed calm, but it cut through everything. If your grandmother wanted this played, we should play it. Camille grabbed his sleeve with both hands. Ethan, please. Not here. Not now. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time that night. Then he turned toward the AV booth. Play it, he said. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered once, twice, and Grandma Lillian's face appeared, steady and unmistakable as the room went silent enough to hear a heartbeat. The screen sharpened, and Grandma Lillian appeared in a softly lit room, sitting straight, hands folded, her silver hair brushed back like she was about to attend church. She wore the same blue cardigan I remembered from childhood, the one that smelled faintly of cedar. Her eyes looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, she said, voice calm and clear, then I'm no longer here, and my family has gathered for something important. A ripple moved through the ballroom. Camille stood rigid, one hand clamped around the back of her chair as if she needed it to stay upright. My mother's face was tight, trapped between panic and performance. My father couldn't blink. Grandma Lillian continued, unhurried. Camille, Elaine, and Robert, I'm speaking to you first, because you'll be tempted to rewrite this the moment it becomes inconvenient. Camille's throat bobbed. Turn it off, she mouthed, but no one moved. In my lifetime, Grandma said, I watched two girls grow up under the same roof. One was praised loudly, the other was loved quietly, mostly by me. A few guests shifted in their seats, but someone near the back whispered, Oh my God. Grandma's gaze softened for a breath. Sienna, if you're not in this room right now, I want everyone to ask one simple question. Why wasn't she invited? The silence turned heavy, like the air itself was judging. Then Grandma's expression hardened again. Not cruel, just final. Now to the matter I know you've been circling like hungry birds. My collection. The pieces I spent a lifetime preserving. The stories I protected inside metal and stone. She held up a small velvet pouch. These were never trophies. They were never leverage. And they were never a reward for whoever demanded them the loudest. Camille's eyes darted to Ethan, then to his parents, then to the guests. Like she was searching for an exit that didn't exist, Grandma leaned slightly closer to the camera. Yeah, I amended my estate legally and deliberately. The Lillian Park collection belongs to Sienna Park. Not because she asked, because she didn't. Not because she needed it to be admired, because she understood it should be respected. My mother's lips parted in a silent gasp. My father's jaw clenched like he'd been slapped. And Camille, Grandma added, voice quieter now, almost disappointed. If you're hearing this at your wedding, it means you still haven't learned the difference between being celebrated and being honorable. A murmur rolled through the room, low, shocked, unstoppable. Grandma's final words landed like a verdict. Truth doesn't ruin a celebration. Lies do. And tonight, the truth has arrived. The screen went black. For one beat, nobody breathed. Then Ethan stood up slowly, eyes locked on Camille, and asked the question every guest was thinking. Did you tell me this collection was yours? Ethan didn't raise his voice, but the question cut through the ballroom. Did you tell me this collection was yours? Camille stared at him, trapped between the screen that had just gone black and the guests who suddenly wanted the truth more than dessert. It's complicated, she said, forcing a laugh. Grandma was emotional. She wanted to punish me. Ethan held out his hand. Give me the papers. Camille clutched them. No. My mother stepped in fast, smile glued on. Ethan, darling, this isn't the time. In front of 400 witnesses? Ethan's eyes flicked to the phones in the air. Or in front of the people she's been bragging to. A murmur rose. Camille's cheeks flushed. They don't understand our family. Ethan's jaw tightened. I don't understand my wife. She turned to my father like he could rescue her. Dad, tell him it's a misunderstanding. My father looked down. Elaine tried to tuck the documents away, but Ethan caught the first page and scanned it. The date hit him first, 2 years ago. Then the notary stamp. Then the line that mattered. Transferred in full. His expression shifted from confusion to something colder, heavier. Betrayal. Ethan lifted the cedar box again. From the bottom, he pulled a second envelope Camille hadn't opened. Law firm seal, my grandmother's handwriting. Call Mercer. He will confirm. Ethan looked up. You want to call it fake? Fine. We'll call. Camille grabbed his sleeve. Please, not here. Then explain it here, he said. Her voice cracked. It was supposed to be mine eventually. Mom told people. Dad told people. Now, Grandma always gave me the nice things. Ethan's gaze didn't soften. So you didn't own it. You just announced you did. My mother bristled. Camille was protecting the family image. Ethan turned toward her. By lying to my parents? By telling them Sienna was unstable and not to contact her? Camille froze. What? Ethan asked, quieter now. You told me she was dangerous. Camille's lips parted, then closed. No answer, only the sound of the room, realizing the sister wasn't missing. She was erased. Ethan faced the crowd. Music off. The ballroom obeyed. He dialed the number on the envelope and put it on speaker. Daniel Mercer, a calm voice answered. Ethan swallowed. Sir? I'm Ethan Hale. I'm calling about the Lillian Park collection. A beat. Then, yes. Yet it belongs to Sienna Park. Camille's knees nearly buckled as the truth landed. Legal, public, and irreversible. The confirmation on speaker didn't just change the mood, it rewired it. 100 whispers became one loud question. Who is Sienna Park? Camille tried to grab the phone from Ethan, but he stepped back. Don't, he warned, quiet enough to sound controlled. You've done enough. My father finally found his voice. This is private family business, he barked, turning to the nearest tables like he could command embarrassment to disappear. But the room didn't belong to him anymore. A woman near the front lifted her phone and said, not unkindly, If it's private, why did the bride brag about it all night? That landed like a slap. Camille's eyes flashed. She forged it, she insisted, pointing at the cedar box as if it were a weapon. Nigashi's always been jealous, always trying to... Stop. Ethan's voice cut through her. You told me she was unstable. Camille froze. Ethan looked at my mother. You too. You both said she couldn't keep a job, that she had episodes, that she made scenes. You warned me not to reach out. My mother's throat worked, searching for a lie that would survive the lights. Then someone stood up near the back, an older man in a charcoal suit, the kind of person people instinctively make space for. I know Sienna Park, he said, calm, certain. She produced the short film for our foundation's gala in Seattle. It raised more money in one night than we'd ever raised before. A ripple moved through the crowd. Another guest leaned in, recognition sparking. Park and Pine Media? That's her company? The man nodded. Award-winning team, booked months out. They don't chase clients. Clients chase them. Camille's mouth opened, then closed. Her face looked suddenly unfamiliar, like the mask had cracked and the panic underneath was finally visible. Ethan stared at her. So while you called your sister an embarrassment, she built something real. Camille snapped, voice breaking. That doesn't mean she gets to ruin my wedding. Ethan didn't flinch. No, Camille, you ruined your wedding the moment you built it on lies. Across the room, the wedding planner, Vivian Lowe, stepped forward, headset still on, expression tight with professional horror. "Ethan," she said carefully, "we have another issue." "What now?" Camille spat. Vivian swallowed. "Your social content vendor, the one filming highlight reels tonight? They're subcontracted under Park and Pine Media." Camille's eyes widened like the floor dropped out. "No, that's not possible." Vivian held up a clipboard. "It's on the paperwork. Owner signature, Sienna Park." The ballroom went dead silent again, because now it wasn't just a will. It was a pattern. Ethan reached for the contract, eyes scanning until they hardened. Then he looked up, phone still in his hand. "Give me her number," he said. And for the first time all night, Camille didn't have a clever answer, only a frightened whisper. "Please don't." The call ended, but the silence didn't. Daniel Mercer's confirmation still hung in the air like a final bell. "It belongs to Sienna Park." Camille's eyes bounced around the ballroom, searching for someone, anyone, to hand her a new reality. My mother stood stiff beside her, lips moving without sound. My father looked like a man realizing he misread his own house for decades. Ethan didn't shout. That was the scary part. He turned to Camille, voice steady. "So you lied to me." "I didn't," Camille started, but her words collapsed under the weight of 400 witnesses. Ethan lifted the notarized page. "You told my parents your grandmother was passing this to you? You told me you had heirloom assets that would stay in our family. You let me repeat it at our engagement dinner." Camille's cheeks flashed red. "It was supposed to be mine eventually." "That's not ownership," Ethan replied. "That's entitlement." A murmur rolled through the tables. Phones tilted higher. A few guests exchanged that look. Polite society turning into a live courtroom. Then Vivian Lowe, the wedding planner, stepped forward. Yet her face had the tight expression of someone watching a six-figure event burst into flames. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I need to report something else." Camille snapped toward her. "Not now." Vivian swallowed. "It's about tonight's media team. The highlights, the drone footage, the social reels." Ethan's gaze didn't leave Camille. "What about it?" Vivian held up her clipboard. "Your vendor is subcontracted. The parent company is Park and Pine Media." Camille's breath hitched. "That's not..." Vivian turned the clipboard so everyone close enough could read it. On the signature line in clean black ink was a name Camille had tried to erase from this day. Sienna Park. The whispering became audible. "Wait, Sienna owns that company? Isn't that the sister? She hired her without knowing?" Camille's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her eyes looked glassy, panicked, like she'd just realized the entire wedding had been filmed by someone she'd called a nobody. Ethan took the clipboard from Vivian and flipped to the contact page. He read once. Then again. Camille grabbed his wrist. "Ethan, please, don't call her." His voice stayed calm, almost gentle. "You told me she was unstable. You warned me not to contact her. And yet her company is documenting our wedding." He pulled his arm free. "So either you lied about her, or you lied about everything." Camille's voice broke. "I was protecting us." Ethan looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "No, you were protecting your image." He tapped the number with his thumb. Across town in a quiet hotel room, my phone lit up on the nightstand. An unfamiliar Charleston number, ringing like a doorbell in the dark. And for the first time all day, I hesitated. My hotel room was quiet enough to hear the ice machine down the hall. The cedar box sat on the desk, lid off, like it had finally finished its job. When my phone lit up with an unknown Charleston number, I answered on the third ring. "Hello? Sienna Park?" a man asked. "Yes." "This is Ethan Hale," he said. "Camille's husband. I got your number from the vendor contract. I'm sorry to call you." He didn't waste time. Your gift box was opened. There were legal documents inside. We played a video of your grandmother. Daniel Mercer confirmed on speaker. The collection is yours. I know, I said. He told me months ago. Ethan's voice tightened. Camille told me you weren't invited because you hate crowds. She told me you were unstable, that you'd cause a scene. I kept my tone flat. Did I? No, he admitted. You weren't even here. Behind him, the muffled ballroom sounded like weather. Voices rising, chairs scraping, someone crying. Ethan lowered his voice. There's more. The planner showed me paperwork. Park and Pine Media is the parent company for tonight's filming. It's mine, I said. Camille hired the vendor, not knowing it ran through my company. A beat of stunned silence. So she paid your company to film a wedding she banned you from? Yes. Ethan exhaled. Camille is screaming this is forged. She's saying she'll contest the will. My mother is threatening lawyers. Your parents look terrified. I glanced at the cedar box. Tell them to read Grandma's letter all the way, I said. What letter? The one under the transfer papers, I replied. There's a clause. On if anyone in the family challenges her decision in court, the entire collection goes into a museum trust. Nobody gets it. Not me, not Camille. It becomes public legacy. Ethan went quiet, then whispered, She did that on purpose. She did, I said, because she knew exactly who would try. His voice softened. Not for Camille, for the truth. Then what do you want? I stared at the desk, at the ribbon Camille had mocked. I want my name spoken like I'm human, I said, and I want her to stop rewriting me. A pause. Will you come here? Ethan asked. I opened my mouth to refuse. 3 sharp knocks hit my door. Then Camille's voice, raw, frantic, cut through the wood. Sienna, open the door, right now. Camille's voice scraped through the wood like she could claw her way back into control. I kept the phone to my ear. Ethan was still on the line, breathing hard on the other end, the ballroom noise muffled behind him. Are you safe? He asked. I'm fine, I said, eyes on the doorknob. But she's here. Another knock, harder. Don't pretend you're above this, Camille snapped. You did this on purpose. I closed my eyes for one beat, then walked to the door and turned the deadbolt. Not because I wanted to fight, because I was done living like a whisper. Camille stood inches from me, mascara streaked, dress rumpled at the waist like she'd been grabbed in a panic. Behind her, my mother hovered with hands clasped tight, face pale. My father stayed half a step back, rigid, like he wanted to be anywhere else. Camille's eyes locked onto mine. Give it back, she hissed. That collection is mine. Grandma meant it for me. I didn't move. Grandma meant what she signed. Camille lunged a fraction closer, lowering her voice like the hallway itself might judge her. You don't even wear jewelry. You don't belong in our world. My world doesn't need your permission, I said. Her face twisted. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Ethan's parents think I'm a liar. My coworkers will see it. You ruined my life. I kept my tone steady. I didn't ruin anything. I delivered the truth you built your image on. My mother's voice cracked. Sienna, please, just talk to her. This is her wedding night. Camille snapped her head toward Mom. Stop begging her. Then back to me, eyes wild. I'm contesting it. I'll take you to court. I'll drag this out until you're exhausted. I watched her say it like a threat, like she hadn't read the letter all the way. Do it, I said quietly. Now Camille blinked. What? There's a clause, I continued. If you challenge Grandma's decision, the collection doesn't go to me. It goes into a public museum trust. Nobody gets it. Not you, not Mom, not Dad. It becomes legacy forever. Camille's mouth opened, then shut. Fear replaced rage in seconds. My father finally spoke, voice low. Lillian anticipated you. Camille turned on him. You knew. He didn't answer. His eyes were on me now. Guilt, calculation, something older than both. From my phone, Ethan's voice came through sharp and clear. Sienna, I'm coming there. Camille heard it. Her head snapped toward the phone. Ethan, don't you dare! A firm voice cut into the hallway from behind them. Miss Park? A man stepped out of the elevator holding a leather folder. Daniel Mercer, and he wasn't alone. Miss Park? Daniel Mercer's voice was calm, the kind that turns a hotel hallway into a courtroom. He stepped out of the elevator in a charcoal suit, leather folder under his arm. Beside him stood a woman in a navy blazer with a museum badge clipped to her lapel. Professional, unreadable. Camille's head snapped toward them. Why is he here? She demanded, like she could veto reality. Daniel looked at me first. Sienna, your grandmother anticipated tonight might get messy. She instructed me to intervene if anyone tried to pressure you. My mother bristled. We're family. Daniel opened the folder and held up a single page. Formal notice. Effective immediately, all communication about the Lillian Park collection goes through my office. No direct demands, no threats, no private deals. Camille laughed once, thin and mean. You can't stop me. I'm contesting it. The woman beside Daniel spoke for the first time. If you contest it, the collection transfers into the Lillian Park Public Legacy Trust, she said evenly. My institution is prepared to take custody the moment Mr. Mercer files. Camille's face tightened. You already planned that? Daniel nodded. Your grandmother planned it. I'm executing it. My father's shoulders sagged, like a man watching a door lock from the outside. Camille turned back to me, eyes bright with fury. You think this makes you powerful? I didn't raise my voice. It makes me protected. Her lip curled. You weren't even at the wedding. You still ruined it. Daniel stepped between us, polite but firm. Miss Park, the wedding ruined itself. Tonight's issue is your conduct right here. My phone buzzed. Ethan again. I'm downstairs, he said. Don't let her corner you. Camille heard his voice and lunged for my phone. I jerked my arm back, but her nails scraped my wrist. Daniel's tone sharpened. Enough! The woman in navy lifted her phone. Security, she said, already typing. Camille froze, chest heaving, then tried a new weapon. Her voice. Fine, she whispered. Keep the jewelry, but you'll lose the only family you have left. For a second, my mother looked like she might speak. She didn't. Daniel slid a sealed envelope onto the small table beside my door. Wax seal, my grandmother's handwriting. Last instruction from Lillian, he said. If Camille contacts Sienna again tonight, call, text, show up. This gets opened and delivered to every guest from the wedding list. Camille stared at the seal like it was a bomb. What's in it? Daniel didn't blink. The full story. At the far end of the hall, the elevator dinged again, and Ethan's voice, closer now, said, Camille, step away from her door. Camille, step away from her door. Ethan's voice filled the hallway like a closing gate. He walked up fast, suit jacket unbuttoned, tie loosened, eyes locked on Camille's hands. Still too close to me, still claiming space she didn't deserve. Camille spun toward him, desperate to regain control. Ethan, she's manipulating you. This is what she does. Ethan didn't even flinch. His gaze dropped to my wrist where Camille's nails had scraped skin red. Something in his face changed. Quiet disgust, then a calm that felt final. Did you just grab her? He asked. Camille swallowed. I was trying to talk. She slammed the door. She opened it, I said evenly. Oh, you came here to demand property you never owned. My mother stepped forward, hands shaking. Please, can we not do this in a hotel hallway? Daniel Mercer lifted his folder. Then stop doing it, he said, polite and lethal. Ms. Park has legal notice. Any further harassment gets documented. Any attempt to contest the estate triggers the trust transfer. The museum representative nodded once. And once the trust triggers, custody moves fast. We have transport arranged. Camille's eyes flashed with panic. You're all ganging up on me. Ethan exhaled through his nose. No, Camille, reality is. He turned toward Daniel. If she contests, nobody gets the collection? Correct, Daniel replied. That was Lillian's safeguard. Ethan looked back at Camille. So you threatened court knowing you'd burn the whole thing down? Camille's voice broke. I was angry. I didn't mean... And you lied about Sienna, Ethan said, each word controlled. You lied to me, to my parents, to everyone in that ballroom. Camille's mask cracked. I was protecting us. Ethan stepped closer, not aggressive, just immovable. You were protecting your image, and you were willing to crush your sister to do it. Silence. Even my father couldn't pretend this was normal anymore. Daniel slid the sealed envelope, Grandma's handwriting, wax intact, onto the table by my door. This, he said, was meant as a last resort. Camille contacting Sienna tonight already meets the condition. If Miss Park requests it, I will deliver its contents to the wedding list immediately. Camille stared at the seal like it was a loaded gun. Sienna, don't, she whispered. Please. I met her eyes. No anger, just distance. Leave, I said. My mother flinched. Sienna, I said leave, I repeated, softer this time, somehow sharper. Ethan nodded toward the elevator. Camille, now! And as the doors slid open, Camille took one last look at me, like she'd finally realized the power she'd been chasing was never the jewelry. It was the ability to decide who gets access to you. The next morning, my phone looked like a crime scene. 37 missed calls. Camille, Mom, Dad, unknown Charleston numbers. A voicemail from Ethan that started with, I'm sorry, and ended with, please don't think you're alone in this. I didn't call anyone back. I checked out before sunrise and let a rideshare carry me to the airport. Charleston's sky was pale and bruised, like it had been awake all night with me. In the back seat, I opened my camera app out of habit, then stopped. For once, I didn't want to capture anything. I just wanted to breathe. At the gate, my assistant in Seattle texted, "Are you awake?" Then, "You're trending everywhere." She sent a link, a shaky 30-second clip from Magnolia Haven, Camille holding Grandma's transfer papers, her smile collapsing, the crowd turning, Ethan demanding answers. The caption read, "Bride exposed by uninvited sister." Millions of views, thousands of comments, strangers cheering, strangers attacking, strangers rewriting my life in emojis and assumptions. I turned my phone face down, hands suddenly cold. When I landed in Seattle, the studio was already buzzing. My assistant met me at the door, eyes wide. "Do you want me to shut it down?" "Yes," I said. "You may not cancel everything for the week." I was halfway through locking my office when the receptionist buzzed. "Sienna, there's a woman here. She says she's your mother." Elaine Park stood in our lobby like she'd stepped into the wrong universe. Pearls, perfect hair, red-rimmed eyes that didn't match the outfit. She stared at the framed features on the wall, at my name printed under headlines she'd never bothered to read. Then she looked at me. "I didn't know," she whispered. I didn't soften. "You didn't ask." Her face crumpled. "I came to tell you, I see it now, and I'm sorry. I let silence do the work. Words couldn't." Elaine reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "Daniel Mercer dropped this at the house last night," she said. "He said it was your grandmother's last mercy." Inside was a simple pearl bracelet. Plain, quiet, nothing like the trophies Camille chased. A note was folded beneath it in Grandma Lillian's handwriting. "Give this to Camille only if she learns what it means." My mother's voice shook. What does that mean, Sienna? I held the bracelet for a long moment, feeling the weight of something that wasn't jewelry at all. It means, I said, the next move isn't mine. Daniel Mercer called the afternoon after my mother left my studio. His tone was the same as always, calm, precise, built for storms. Sienna, he said, Camille has retained counsel. They're floating a challenge and, worse, a narrative. I closed my office door. What kind of narrative? She's telling people you staged the wedding exposure, Daniel replied. That you weaponized the video and orchestrated the contract to humiliate her. A bitter laugh escaped me. She banned me from the room. I know, he said. But lies travel faster than court filings. Wedding guests are receiving messages. Some are asking if the video was a setup. Daniel went on. If she keeps pushing, I recommend we send the clarification packet to the full guest list. Timeline, signatures, communications. It ends the rumors. I glanced at the pearl bracelet on my desk, the one Grandma left for Camille only if she learned what it meant. Don't send it, I said. Daniel paused. Are you certain? Not for her, I answered. For me. I'm not building my life around her collapse. That night, I went to Harbor Federal and signed the transfer forms in person. In a private viewing room, Daniel laid out the pieces. The sapphire brooch, the Art Deco earrings, the pearl strands Camille had bragged about like trophies. Under soft light, and they looked less like status and more like history. The museum representative, Dr. Nadine Cho, spoke gently. We can display the most significant pieces with a plaque honoring Lillian Park. The rest can remain secured. You decide the terms. I pictured Grandma polishing metal with patient hands, teaching me that preservation was love. I want her legacy protected, I said, not fought over. On the drive back, my phone buzzed with one new message from Camille, a 30-second voice note. Her voice was hoarse. Sienna, I need that bracelet. People are asking. I need it. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I was wrong. Just need. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a blank document and typed one sentence at the top. Access is earned. Then I wrote the rules that would decide whether my family ever gets through my door again. And when I hit save, my Ethan texted one line that made my heart stop. Camille is on a plane to Seattle. Camille arrived at my studio just after noon, sunglasses on, hair pinned perfectly like appearance could rewrite consequences. 2 steps behind her was my mother, wringing her hands, and a man in a gray suit. My assistant started to stand, but I held up a hand. I'll take this. Camille walked straight toward me. No hello, no apology. Where is it? She demanded. The bracelet and the collection. I didn't move. Pick one reason you're here, Camille. Truth only. Her jaw clenched. She looked around, at my name on the wall, at the awards, at the people behind glass, and I saw something new. Uncertainty. I lost everything, she said, voice dropping. My wedding, Ethan, my reputation. They're calling me a liar. That's because you were, I replied, not cruel. Just steady. The lawyer cleared his throat. Ms. Park, my client would like to discuss an amicable arrangement. Daniel Mercer stepped from the hallway like he'd been summoned. There will be no arrangement, he said. The estate is settled. Any challenge triggers the public trust. Camille's shoulders sagged. I'm not here to contest, she whispered. Then quieter. I don't know who I am without what people think. The room went still. I opened my desk drawer and placed the pearl bracelet on the table between us. Plain. Modest. Grandma left you this, I said. But only if you learn what it means. Camille's eyes filled. Give it to me. Not yet, I said. Here are the terms. You publicly correct the lies about me. You stop contacting my staff. You stop threatening court. And you apologize, without excuses, once. Then you leave me alone unless I invite you back. My mother's breath caught. Camille looked like she might explode. Then she swallowed, and the fight drained out of her. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. "I'm sorry," she said. "I erased you because I was scared you'd outshine me. I called you unstable because it made me feel safe. I was wrong. It wasn't perfect, but it was real." I slid the bracelet toward her. "This doesn't fix the past," I said. "It's just proof you can start different." Camille clutched it like it weighed 1,000 pounds. That evening, I signed the museum loan agreement for Grandma's key pieces. Her legacy protected, her story honored, not fought over. And for the first time, I understood the gift she'd truly left me. Not jewelry, a boundary, and a name no one could erase again. If this story hit home, tell me in the comments.